Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I am your host, Vinay, with my co host, Raj. The Lakers are currently on a two-game slide in which they lose a heartbreaking game to Orlando off of some missed free throws from Anthony Davis, from Austin Reeves, and LeBron James. Collective effort, though I think the timeline's been very spirited in their debate about who's actually responsible for that loss. And then they get their butts kicked pretty hard in the second half at home against the Denver Nuggets in a game where they had the lead at the half. Looked like they were kind of the team that had control of that game, and then fully lost control of that game in the third quarter. So we're in a two-game slide, and the strength of schedule is not getting any more difficult. We've got the Suns coming up, and we have a few other competitive teams coming up as well. So, Raj, we're going to talk about what we've seen these past two games. But before we get into that, how are you doing, my friend?
I am good. I'm good. Coming off, I was at the South Bay game a few games ago. They got a lot of injuries, but Maxwell Lewis is playing well, so it's a guy that I go to talk to, and yeah, it's been cool. I just want to say I have nothing to do with this UMG lawsuit, so stop DMing it to me. I see
Yeah,
it, you know,
just
like
just because Raj is Indian doesn't mean he's automatically a lawyer. Though our
right, right.
community does encourage our kids to become lawyers.
I have nothing to do with it. I was not consulted about it. I just a fan of the music. So I just like to say that I have nothing to do with that lawsuit. I just hope we get back to the music. But no, it's been tough. That Orlando game obviously was one, and then the Denver loss. Following that, it's been a tough 3 or 4 days. But yeah, excited to kind of talk and I guess therapy my way through this through the pod here.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a very interesting 48 hours, 72 hours since the Orlando
Yeah,
loss. I think there's been a lot of blame being thrown around, and there's a lot of just infighting, I would guess, with the fan base. I think especially after this Denver game, a lot of people have very much soured on AD, like just kind of his play. It's
yeah.
tough. You miss game-winning, potentially game-sealing free throws, and then you come out with a dud against Jokic. I think that game was a little more heightened because, um, you know, Russ plays for the Nuggets, and Russ had a pretty good game in the second half. Um, and I know that is to the chagrin of many Laker fans
Oh yes.
that Russ did well, and I think Russ had some stuff to say afterwards on his IGs. But it is what it is. That's just kind of how basketball works. Denver gets their butts kicked today by like 30 by the Knicks, so it just kind
Yeah.
of goes to show you that. I mean, at this point in the NBA, unless you're like the Boston Celtics, it's basically any given night somebody can get beat by somebody, anybody. Which I don't know, could be a good thing. There's shows a lot of parity and competitiveness. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I understand that, and I get Denver got beat by the Knicks today, and I totally understand. And the Knicks maybe are playing better. They just lost to Utah, but last Lakers Nuggets, Vinay, in my opinion, is not
Yeah.
just any other game.
Oh, it's not. Yeah.
That team has beat us. I think the stat was 13 out of 14,
Hmm.
and I was thinking about this today while I was preparing. I don't remember another team that's had the Lakers number to that extent in the last 15 years. I mean, the last one I could think of, Vinay, was '08 Boston, right? In terms
Mm.
of they beat us in the finals. They beat us at home this year, and I'm pretty sure we lost on the road to the Celtics that season as well. Again, 2008, I'm jogging my memory here. But I also remember like that Christmas win was huge on '08. I don't like that was a huge win to kind of get over the mental hump
Yeah.
of it. And it's crazy. Like I was listening to the because I didn't watch the Nuggets game live, so I rewatched it. And Stu Lance, Vinay, is usually very much in. I know you don't listen to the commentary, but
Yeah.
Stu Lance usually is very much just basketball. Like he strays very far from some of the like stuff that's outside the game, right? Like the mental battle. He's like, oh, you just got to hit your threes and play defense and rebound. That's kind of how
Yeah.
Stu likes to keep it. But during the broadcast, he was very much in like Denver's in their heads, and there's
Mm.
like this and the type of stuff he was saying of there's like a lack of belief that the Lakers had when they played Denver. I think that's huge. I think that's like, and I was just thinking, like, I don't remember the last opponent. I don't know about you if you can remember. Maybe the terrible Charlotte teams. I remember we used to have losses to them strangely while we were good during the like title years. But I don't remember a team having the Lakers number like this. And I think it's interesting to look at the matchups, and I get that we'll get into the defense later and kind of
Mhm.
things we agree and disagree about it. But just want to start there, I guess. Denver's dominance of the team, of the franchise for like 3 seasons now, 2 different head coaches, and again, I think JJ's been great. I think it's interesting if you were to like flip the quotes we heard today, and
Yeah, I
like
know what you're gonna say.
it's just it's the exact same stuff, right? It's JJ in plain words said they need to play harder, and so
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And so I just think it's interesting, that matchup. But what are your thoughts, I guess, just on that in terms of Denver's just stranglehold, I guess, on the makeup of like how we play against them.
Yeah, that first half, the first half of just thinking about this game, like the first half of this game, I thought the Lakers came out with like a lot more like intensity, and then in the second half, like that intensity just kind of disappeared. I don't know if it's because Denver came out with like a zone look in the second half that kind of encouraged the Lakers to take a bunch of, contested threes or just take threes in general, not attack the rim. But they stopped generating turnovers and stuff like that. There's something about this matchup, Raj, where they feel it almost feels like the team comes in knowing, and mind you, Aaron Gordon didn't play. Like they come
Yeah.
in knowing that like we're not going to be the more physical team against these guys. Like they come in with that attitude. Like
Mm.
there's never, and it feels like there's never like this. We'll get like even in the playoffs, we got games where like AD came out and he was like guns blazing. He was like scoring and whatnot. The scoring part is not the concern. It's like we're gonna muck this game up and we're gonna make it like a rock fight. Like the Lakers don't seem, and it's maybe not just Denver, it's with every team. Like they don't seem to want to do that with this team specifically. And when they don't come out with that attitude, and then Denver does, and then you get Jokic, who's coming out and doing everything he possibly can. He's like deliberately fouling guys, basically baiting the refs to try and call a foul. And if they don't, it's advantage to Denver. Like, I think there's something, I don't want to say they go into these games thinking they're doing that, but I think there's something where they go into these games and they think to themselves, like, we're not going to beat them like at this, like there's just something that they're going to concede, and it spills too much into the rest of the game. I want to ask you a question. Do you think our two stars are hyper aware in this matchup specifically? Not all matchups, this matchup specifically. Are they hyper aware of the fact that like they're probably not going to win that game, or like that, like the other, like maybe Jokic has just got something rolling too much and they're not going to be able to counter it?
So what I honestly think it is, and I was rewatching it back, and I think like our whole defense, Vinay, is just catered around AD being the protector, right? He's the guy that protects mistakes, cleans up mistakes. Denver and Embiid does this, but Embiid's just hurt. So the last few matchups, it's been
Mm-hmm.
strange, and Philly's just been a wonky team. But there's like few guys who go directly at AD,
Mm-hmm.
and it completely breaks our defense, right? One of them is Jokic. Another name is Sabonis. Sabonis does this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sabonis goes directly at AD. And people wonder why we continue to lose to Sacramento. That's part of it as well. The last time we beat Sacramento is because LeBron scored, I think, like 24 or whatever it
In the third
was
quarter, yeah,
in
he
the
went
third
crazy.
quarter.
Yeah.
Just an absolute eruption to put them over. But that game, how it was going, was the same of how these games are going. Lakers went up big early, I believe, and then Sacramento clawed back because again,
Mm-hmm.
Sabonis is a guy that goes at AD. I think that specifically, like that flaw of I will go later in terms of this is a team building flaw, a roster flaw, or a like philosophy flaw from the team. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is. And honestly, like I think you need two bigs against Denver. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of times where like Austin switched on Jokic, Rui switched on you. Like those are like it's a layup every single time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a level of like physicality that I don't know. I just felt like AD wasn't up for that battle last night.
Do you think it's do you think it's just AD? Because I want to make the argument that our entire team doesn't.
It's not just AD, but I think like if he doesn't have that, then like it breaks everything else. At least from
Okay.
what I was watching, and like Austin spoke today and said they're not, they don't have good defensive talent, which like I think that could be objectively true. I still think there's places where like guys like Rui can be better, but I think like if you lose that, and like 80 didn't score 20, I believe.
Mhm.
LeBron, I forgot what he finished at, but I don't think he had a great offensive night either. Like you're not gonna beat the Nuggets doing that anyway. But I feel like that specific matchup, Jokic is another guy. Also, like just continuing with their matchup is that Jokic forces AD Vinay to be a jump shooter. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think we've talked about it, and I've questioned like how real is this jump shot, and I think everyone's pretty excited. He's shooting 42% from three
Yeah.
this season so far. But a lot of times, Jokic still last night was just like, go ahead, take the mid range pull up. You're not barreling your head down here.
Mhm.
I'm not fouling you. You're not going to the line. And so, like, all your baskets are going to be jump shots. And, like, 80 was cold, and he's allowed to have a cold night. It's just, I thought that spilled into the defensive end. Either in a lot of plays, too, where, like, I think you brought this up, the transition defense, as well as just
Yeah.
an absolute tire fire right now. And,
Yeah.
when 80's on the other side, like, and he reaches in or he stays back, our team is just God. But I think LeBron and AD are smart dudes and understand, like, that's a more physical team, but it shouldn't have been last night or the night before. No Aaron
Yeah.
Gordon. It's Jokic. It's Peyton Watson, who's he's a very rangy defender, but he's not a
Mhm.
physical guy. And off their bench, Saric comes off their bench. Obviously, Russell Westbrook comes off their bench, who's a physical guy at the guard position. But I don't know. That third quarter was like you got punked a little bit by
I'm
a
with you.
team.
Yeah.
Christian Braun, like just tearing balls out of people's hands and going the other way. I don't know. It's rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. That performance. So it's hard for me to just step over it. But what are your thoughts on like the stars in this matchup?
So I think I think sometimes the Stars are aware that their execution level in the game is not at the same level as Denver's. Like I think they're hyper aware of that sometimes. Like when they're swinging the ball around and it gets to D'Lo and he gets a wide open three and he shorts it. Like when stuff like
Mm,
that happens, I think that starts to seep in because to some degree, I think really smart players. I think LeBron's like one of those guys. I think they know how high of a level of execution you have to beat this Denver team. Like the margin of error that they have that you get against a Denver team isn't and this is not to say like Denver's an amazing team. They can lose to bad teams too as well. But like when you're playing a team that's a very high execution team because that's just how they play, um, and your team isn't, or it requires like a damn near perfect game, I could argue, or like 4 quarters of like excellent basketball to win a game, maybe by single digits, like high single digits. I wonder if like when you don't see that happen, it kind of like the guys kind of let go of the rope a little bit. I'm not saying like they're quitting, but I'm saying um like how you're saying like the missed jump shots creep into the defensive intensity.
100%.
I
Hmm.
wonder if that happens on the execution level as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like the only thing with that Vinay is like that's not KCP and Aaron Gordon, starting
Yeah.
like or whatever bench they used to have. Like it's Julian Strawther coming off the bench. That's Christian Braun. Credit to him. I thought Christian Braun just played harder than a lot of our.
He went 7 for 7.
Yeah.
Like the last year, MPJ had a perfect game against us in one of the playoff games or like one of
Mhm.
the regular season games. He went like 10 for 10 or something crazy like that. I'm trying to figure out why that keeps happening because I feel like every time we play Denver, one guy goes near perfect from the field. That's like crazy for me to see.
I feel like what it is the Lakers have kind of committed to doubling Jokic on any time that it's not AD on him, right?
Mm,
So like there were minutes where Koloko was in the game, where Jokic was in the game. But if you have to double when your center is guarding the other team's center on the catch, like the other team's gonna get great shots, and Jokic
yeah,
is just too good. And I'm not saying like they shouldn't have helped if Koloko's on Jokic. It's just
yeah,
there's a level of like your defense breaks. And then when you have to send help when AD is down there, like that just breaks the scheme. And so Christian Braun, he started off with a dunk, 2 wide open threes, and that
yeah.
just got him going. He hit his next 4 shots. So they're gonna like the role players in a sense are gonna get great shots when you do that. But yeah, it's just I understand what you're saying. Like Denver, executes really well, but this Denver team shouldn't like
Yeah, no, you're right.
require that, right? And that's to me where it's kind of like there's a mental hurdle that you got to jump over, it feels like. And I'm not saying like the next win against Denver is gonna break all the demons that they have, but it's very clear they need some kind of like our last win versus Denver, Renee, I believe was when we were down 3-0 and we beat them, right? And it's just that just doesn't feel the same, as like a win that you earn. I'm not saying they earn that win, but you earn in the regular season. It feels like they'll need that to like jump over this fence. But yeah, 80 just let's take on 80 real quick because I know you want to get to the rest of the team. I rewatched the game very recently, and it's just there's a passivity that he gets. I feel like when there's like a big physical center standing in front of him. Is there a solve for that, or is that just kind of again? 80's been a magnificent MVP type person. It's just I'm just talking about specifically in matchups against like Jokic. It feels like there's a mental hurdle there, and
so I wonder if it's Jokic specific though, because we've seen 80 go off against like Gobert. We've seen him attack Embiid. We've seen him attack other physical centers. So it's very, very unique to whatever's going on against Jokic that there's that passivity kicks in. But I do think it's a rolling, like it's like a snowball effect, because what happens is if he's missing shots and then Jokic goes in and just straight bullies him like to the rim, because Jokic doesn't try to do it with jump shots. Like he's trying to punish AD in the paint and score at the rim. When that happens, I think there's a compounding effect on AD. I don't know if you can get through that. Like that's like an internal issue for AD. Like AD has to like at some point be like, yo, if I can't make shots, I'm not letting this dude score on me. Like that for some reason that part of it's not there. I've seen him do it with other guys when he has bad shooting games, but for some reason with Jokic he doesn't do it. I could argue the same thing happens like against Sabonis. Like Sabonis takes it right to him, and he, even if AD's having like a subpar or like an okay offensive game, he doesn't. That challenge doesn't come there anymore. And I don't know. See, I don't want to use the word soft, Raj, because that implies.
I don't think that's correct either.
Yeah, that implies something else. But there's just something about, hey, you know what? I don't have it going today, and this dude is just, he's just like barreling into me. I can't get a call and blah blah blah. I'm gonna. It's actually, it's not soft. It's like self-preservation mode. He's like, you know what? It's not worth killing myself for this matchup or this single game. And I wonder if that's just what it is.
So I'm with you on that. And I'm not saying this is a message to the front office or anything, but I think like if you've heard AD speak, he's been very clear. He's been very vocal. It's like, can I get a center that will play next to me and take the bruising of the regular season? Like that's. And Rob Pelinka in the front office just keeps going one year out the other. I
think every week we're getting linked. Every week we're getting linked to
Jonas Valanciunas, my least favorite center in a lot of the league. But I understand it. I get the logic of it. But I think again when you hear AD speak about like what he likes, and Christian Wood is a part of that. I think Christian Wood is not a defensive center, but big body that I'm sure AD looks at Christian Wood. Like he can play next to me. He could take the rebound. He rebounds well for his size, and he can take some of the bruising. And who delivers more punishment, Vinay, than Jokic in the league? Like maybe Draymond a little bit, but he doesn't do it the same way. But Jokic's screens are very hard. They're sometimes always moving. But Jokic is a super physical dude. And like I'm sure part of it is that self-preservation as well, because I think in the playoffs, like I think AD was up for the challenge for what he could do, but in a like random regular season night, his jumper's not falling, the team's not really playing well, no other guard has it. I can kind of see him kind of stepping away, but then I keep going back to this team beat you 13 out of 14 times. They just beat you in 5 again the last playoffs. Like I just
you know who had our number? The Clippers did. Like the Clippers are an example of a team that had our number for a long time, and we would have so many games that would go down to the wire, and we would lose those games. And it wasn't until the bubble game where like Braun kind of like that. Remember that play where he takes on Kawhi or he takes on Paul George and forces him to pass it out to Kawhi, and then he takes on Kawhi, and Kawhi ends up like it's just like a shot clock violation or something bad happens like that. And then we get the Russ D'Lo Vando trade happens, and then we win a couple of games against them too.
Well, so the Clippers, they had our number when I think like they were on the rise, and we were kind of this lottery team, right? And they wouldn't just beat us; they'd beat us by like 40. Your favorite player, Chris Paul, would be on the other side of a lot of those. A lot of Chris Paul and Blake Griffin lobs and
Chris Paul.
DeAndre Jordan lobs. And then I think we beat them right before the bubble. Then we beat them in the bubble.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that I believe Kawhi and Paul George both played in, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah.
I don't remember a team when we were good, Vinay, just have, or, semi trying to contend.
Yeah.
Have our
I
number,
think
like,
Ashan here on the YouTube comments is kind of saying like the Clippers didn't have a mental edge. It feels like
Yeah.
the Nuggets have a mental edge on us.
Yes. And they not only have the mental edge, like they brag about like Michael Malone with the D'Lo stuff during the playoffs, or like it's just they not only have the mental edge, they brag about the mental edge. And but again, like I keep like Vinay, that's not the Jamal Murray that like Denver is expecting either. Like this is not the same. I understand Jokic is still an absolute monster and causes us problems in a way that a lot of teams don't. It's just you can't lose by 20. What did they lose by 25 at home? With rest advantage. It's just or not rest advantage, but you know what I'm saying. Like they weren't on a second half.
Yeah, the Nuggets played a back-to-back. They had played the Mavs the night before or something like that, right? For
yes.
Yeah.
Denver was on a second half back. So I'm less forgiving on that one. And to go out just that quietly for a team that is still trying to find himself and has a nice groove to start the season and just lost in the way they did against Orlando. I don't know. I thought this one stings. And then you just mentioned the games coming up. They have OKC this week. They have Phoenix, who's magically healthy tomorrow because of course they are. On the road in a in-season tournament game.
And I think we get the Spurs again.
Yes, we got the Spurs again. Victor Wembanyama
they'll
is back.
They'll try to spoil. Yeah, they're definitely going to try and play spoiler for sure.
Devin Vassell will be back for that game because of course he'll be back for that. It's so fun. Oh, go ahead.
No. So let me ask you a question. We had this conversation in the group chat, and I think this is a really good topic that we should. And we'll get into individual player specific stuff defensively that I think we really should discuss. But I just want to discuss this philosophically because I don't want to save it to the end because I think it's a really good discussion. Is this a coaching issue? And I think this will be a nice transition to what we're going to talk about. Is this a coaching issue? Is this something that can be remedied with coaching, or is it functionally a roster issue? Because you and I have a difference of opinion about what this is. So you give me your thoughts. Do you think this is something that is and obviously a better roster, a better player, healthier players, obviously would be the solution to a lot of this. So we're not going to act as if the roster doesn't have a part of this. But in the interim, is this something that can be remedied by coaching? Is there something JJ can do or say, or Nate McMillan and Scott Brooks scheme to help us figure this part out?
You're talking about straight just defensively,
just straight defense. Offense is fine. Yeah, we're like a top 5 offense. I'm not worried about that. Our defense is terrible.
Top 4 in offense, Vinay. We are 26th in defense, and
very bad.
And we were having this conversation, like you mentioned in the group chat, and I agree that I think most people would kind of say this roster is defensively deficient. And obviously, I was up here waving my Cam Reddish flag. Like, I don't think you guys understand.
You're right about it. Yeah.
Sure. And I was gonna say before, like, it just feels like deja vu because Cam Reddish started the last in-season tournament game against Phoenix on the road. That was a huge win for us last year, and he'll be starting again on Tuesday, I would assume. Doesn't seem like Dalton's going to re-enter the starting lineup. But so, Vinay, we have, again, if I think we poll Laker fans, should Anthony Davis be in the DPOY conversations? I think most people would say that yes, right? They would agree with that. You're starting Cam Reddish, who you're starting him purely for defensive purposes. Again, I think if we polled most Laker fans, they'd be like, yeah, Cam Reddish is a above average defender. I think he'll at least hit that mark. Some of us are a little higher. I think Cam's one of the best like on-ball guard defenders in the league. Obviously, the offense is questionable. We're sticking to defense here. You still have LeBron James starting, right? So you have Rui Hachimura, who's who's improved as a weak side block guy, who's improved as a low man help guy. You have LeBron, who still gives you the size, and obviously the defensive effort waxes and wanes, but still LeBron James on the defensive end. Then you start Austin Reeves. To me, even that's not a 26th in defense team. Maybe that's like a 15 to 20 defensive team. That's not one of the. We're barely ahead of the Washington Wizards.
They were the 9th under Darvin Ham post All-Star break for however many of those 30 games were. The Lakers were the 19th best defense in the NBA. So they've gotten worse with nearly the same roster. Obviously, we don't have Vando. We didn't really have Vando last year. I
We
want to
didn't have
say
Vando
either.
last year either.
But
You
they've
also have
gotten
Max.
worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've gotten much worse this year.
Right, and you've also have Max that's been introduced into the rotation. Right,
Mhm.
you also are.
Hey, Gabe comes back. We didn't have
This is
Gabe
what I was
last
about.
year.
But
Yeah,
we're
go
playing
ahead.
Gabe for defense. It's the only reason Gabe Vincent plays 20 minutes a game. Is for defensive purposes. Okay, you're playing
Yep.
Max Christie, who shout out my guy LA Bound, who gets a lot of hate on Twitter for for talking about Max Christie. But Max Christie is played because he's an athletic wing who's supposed to be able to defend his position.
Yeah.
I think both of us have spoke on it that Austin's improved on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, his efforts there. Yeah,
his efforts there, yes. And I think he's a good chaser. Again, I think we put defense in a one big ocean bucket, and it's a separate. They're separate skills defensively. I'm not blaming JJ Redick for the defense being 27. That's what I'm saying. But I do think there's again, he's a first time head coach. I think there's a defensive identity and culture that needs to be instilled, and I think it needs to be instilled early, right? Comparing the two coaches is just, I remember when Frank Vogel was hired, he was very much like, this is a defensive team, this is a defensive roster, and they're gonna guard. Again, his guards were Avery Bradley, who was out of the league, I believe, or maybe
former all defensive team
close.
guy. Yeah.
And we forget now, but KCP under Luke Walton was an absolute tire fire. Did not know what he was doing. Most Laker fans were ready to, wave the goodbye flag to KCP, and said,
I mean, they wanted him to go back to jail. That was a thing. That was a campaign that was going on with Lakers Twitter. I mean, jokingly, I would hope, but yeah, when he would miss shots and not play well, that was a thing.
Exactly. And I'm not saying Vogel was some elite coach. Vogel was also about to be on, or he's not even in the league right now. He's assistant coaching somewhere. But I think there is a defensive identity that has not been pressed. And maybe it was to, the detriment of building an offense. And JJ's built a very good offense, and I, give him credit for that. But I do think our defense has fallen way off the cliff. I think we switch way too easily. We give off switches. Antonio Daniels was mentioning this on the broadcast, but no screen, no scheme. And that means if there's not a real screen, then you don't actually have a defensive scheme that you have to input. The Lakers switch willy-nilly. They'll switch AD and Austin they're switching the Celtics are switching Derek White and Drew Holiday. Oh yeah, Austin, you go guard, the premier offense. And so a lot of possessions we end up with the other team's best ball handler on our weakest defender. Yeah. Because the way we fight through screens, I think, is not technically sound either. It's just a lot of stuff I see. You pointed out a lot of the transition defense, and then I asked you, I was like, is transition defense a talent issue, or is it a philosophy issue? And I believe transition defense is more of a philosophy issue than a talent issue. Ime Udoka has the Houston Rockets, Vinay has the top 4 defense in the league. Jalen Green was a terrible defender 2 years ago.
And Şengün is not a world beater defensively either. He's not a guy who's
to me, he's a terrible defender. He's an awful defender, but they have a scheme, they have a philosophy. The Clippers, God love Chris Dunn. I promise Chris Dunn is not the reason they're top 5 in defense. They have a philosophy that they've built. Zubac has deficiencies defensively, but they built a defensive identity that can cover for that. They play James Harden 40 minutes a game, are having a top defense in the league.
Yeah, Raj, they're actually, I think I was looking up or somebody posted their stats. It might be one of the Clippers people I follow. They have almost the exact opposite offense defense ratings that the Lakers do. They have a number 4 defense and a number 26 offense. And that's why our records are so similar to each other. They just committed to the other version. Harden's been awful he does the creation stuff, and he had a nice stretch of games to start. But I think at one point, it might still be the case, he's shooting under 42% on the season from the field. That's horrendous from the guy that's supposed to be taking most of the shots. But their defensive floor is so high that it allows them to stay in games that they shouldn't be in games with.
But I mean, for them, right? And again, I'm not saying they're in a better spot than us. That's not what I'm trying to put out here. But they have a 30-point a game scorer that they're hoping to get back. And Harden, in my opinion, watching a lot of these Clipper games, his efficiency, I'm not saying Harden's some world-beating player right now, but to me, his efficiency is because he starts next to guards that really can't create their own shot. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
they're playing Jordan Miller, who's this kid I really like. That's very talented, but on the two-way. And obviously they have Derrick Jones Jr., not a shot creating guard. Norm Powell is kind of, I don't think he's even played in a little. I'm not sure.
I
But
think
he's
he's missed a
definitely
couple of games, but he was on a heater for a while. He's been pretty well.
right. He was on like an all-star level heater almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just and Ty Lue's obviously been coaching for a long time.
Yeah.
I've been rambling for a long time, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
So
excusing it as the roster is just too it's too easy. It puts a lot of guys off the hook that shouldn't be.
So
But
let's take that thought process, because I think this is something that we had a disagreement on. The transition defense, if it's a personnel issue or if it's a philosophical issue.
yes,
And I agree with you that philosophically you can have a bad transition defense philosophically. But I don't think in this Lakers specific situation, I don't think philosophically have effort. Am I still here? Can you see me, Raj?
yeah, you're good.
Okay, yeah, I think I jumped out for a second. But I think there's a I don't think JJ has anything schematically that's preventing them from being a good transition defense. I think it's the players themselves. Because, dude, let's just stick to the Denver game, because that was the most recent thing. Like, there were so many times in that Denver game where a guard is forced to pick up Jokic because he's ahead of AD, which obviously we always say that AD has to run back. And so if he doesn't run back, Jokic will take advantage of it. But there's a layer to this, Raj, that's extra annoying, which is that the second biggest guy, who's already back, doesn't pick up Jokic. He
Picks up the
just,
guard.
Yeah, he picks up a guard and just stays with them. There's no communication whatsoever about anything that's going on. And that's like a discipline thing. Like, I don't think there's a coaching thing. Like, I think these guys just pick up whoever, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, we'll figure it out once we get to half court. I want to take one step back, and give an example of a bad execution, which could be a little bit because of the coach, but I think it's mainly because of the player. Lakers go up in that Orlando game. I forgot, somebody scores a bucket. I think it's Braun or AD makes a shot. I don't know. Somebody makes a shot on the Lakers game, and we're up 5, I want to say, or we're up 4 or something. Yeah, no, we're up 4. And we score a bucket. And Franz Wagner gets the ball and takes it the full length of the court, Raj, in 7 seconds. This is a situation where you're up 2 possessions, and your goal should be to make them use up as much, if you're not going to foul while you're up, to make them use as much shot clock as possible to get a clean shot off. The very worst thing you can do in that situation is allow a guy to just go full speed, unchecked, into a layup. And that's exactly what Franz Wagner does. And he's one of the bigger guys on the floor for Orlando. And I think he scores a layup over AD. AD doesn't want to foul him or whatever because he's already out of position.
This is end of the game?
This is towards the end of the game, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think after this, it led to the Lakers calling a timeout, AD missing his free throws, and then Franz games us. I think that was the sequence. I might be wrong. I might be off by a possession or two. But when that happened, like, I don't want to say I was livid, but I was just like, oh, we're probably going to lose this game. Because on a base level, you don't need coaching to tell you this. On a base level, whoever is responsible for guarding Franz in that situation, I think might have been Cam, or I don't know. Actually, Cam might not have been in the game because I think D'Lo was in the game at the time. It was like D'Lo, Austin, and Dalton, maybe. All 3 of them were at the same time.
Yeah.
The person who's supposed to be checking Franz has to pick him up early to slow down the speed of the ball. And that just never happened. And this was off of a dead ball, Raj. Like, this wasn't like a missed shot or something like that. This is like they inbounded it and got it up the floor in 7 seconds. And so my thing is, like, I can't imagine you require that level of coaching where JJ has to literally scream to you and tell you to press the ball. Like, there has to be a little bit of like, oh, we're up 2 possessions, make them run the clock sort of thing. And I think the Lakers players themselves forget, because it's not, we're trying to get defensive value out of guys where defense isn't their strengths. And those guys will do it only for so long. and hope that AD cleans up most of it when they mess up. And I think Austin kind of mentioned that a little bit. He's just like, yeah, we don't really have a defensive personnel, and AD has to do a lot of stuff to clean up. But that's also telling me that Austin's, I think you mentioned it, Austin's hyper aware. He's like aware of the fact that he's not a good defender. But that doesn't mean
Right.
you can't be a good, like have good IQ or be smart about it. And my concern is that we've got too many guys that are their defensive IQ is like either non-existent or it's very like the engagement level of that IQ is like very low. Maybe lasts for a quarter, maybe lasts if it's like ISO ball and stuff like that because you're just locked in on one guy. But for the most part, after the first quarter, say goodbye to that defensive execution. Is that a fair way, I think, of describing it? What do you think?
I think so, and I think on that play at least, again, as you don't want to just let a guy walk into a layup, and the Lakers do that a lot during end of games. But I think on that one, they're just the league has become so fearful of the three, of teams fouling up 6, for when teams shoot 3. So I think on that one, they were like, let's just not foul, don't let them shoot a 3. I'm guessing, but I know that happens a lot more often than just the end of the game. The Lakers give up a lot of straight line drives, especially in transition. I can see that in terms of where the personnel just doesn't have, but I think I'm not looking for, I guess, everyday screaming or discipline, Vinay. I'm looking for accountability. Like I asked this in the chat, and I think it's interesting. Would D'Lo play on these Houston Rockets?
No, I don't. What the current Houston Rockets team?
The,
What
the
is
current D'Lo on the current Houston Rockets, who's
No,
would probably be as talented as a player that's on there. Probably should. I don't know
no,
who they're
not
starting.
Udoka wants guys that'll scrap on defensive rebound. So no, I don't think so. I don't think
This is where
D'Lo
I'm
would be
going.
very
This is where
high
I'm
in
going though.
regards. Yeah.
If D'Lo knew that was how he got minutes. I'm not saying cut players. I want to make it clear.
Yeah.
I'm not directing towards this. It's just Gabe Vincent is playing because of his ability to defend.
Fair.
Right. If he could not defend, he would not play. So there's a clear messaging there of we don't care about your shots. Go ahead and defend. That message is not permeating to other players, in my opinion. Like it's not. I don't see that in D'Lo's play. I don't see that in Rui's play. I see Dalton trying on defense. He's a rookie, so I think there's a lot of starry-wide stuff out. I don't know.
Do you think JJ's telling them that as long as they're doing what he asked them to do, they're all good, not to worry about the other stuff?
I think JJ has not he has not built a defensive identity, and maybe with having stars, he thought that this would kind of because JJ's too smart not to coach defense. There's no way he's not Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni is just, hey guys, go score 7 seconds left, figure it out on defensive end. I think there's a little.
That's a very fascinating way to think of it, because I think on the last pod or 2 pods ago, we asked the question of, do we think Gabe even cares about shooting the ball, or is JJ telling him, no, just go out there and play defense? That's what we need you to do. The shots will come if they come, which ironically was funny because I think the very next game, pregame, he made a joke about basically Gabe not shooting the ball.
Right.
And I was just like, what the fuck? Why are you why would you say that? Anyways, I wonder. You see, we don't really have insight as to how JJ coaches fundamentals for the team, so we don't know what his defensive fundamentals are, or obviously we know the stuff about he likes to drop X's and O's and whatnot, and we've seen that the ATOs and the slobs and the blobs and all those plays have looked really good, but the baseline stuff has not been good. We'll use pick and roll sometimes, and then we'll go away from it, even though it's effective. There's no baseline stuff. If you watch the Denver Nuggets execution against us, as soon as Jamal Murray goes out, they say, okay, we're going to run pin down screens for MPJ because that's our next best offensive set. And we're going to alternate between running that and then running pick and roll with Russ and Jokic. And they torch the Lakers just doing that, outside of any turnovers or stuff they generate for easy points. What would you say the baseline stuff is that we use? What is it that the Lakers use that's a baseline, hey, you know what? This is a crunch time. We got to win this quarter handily. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go to this the entire night. Is it the Braun AD pick and roll? Because we don't spam that as much as we probably should.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't
If
even
you
spam him in at the end of games anymore. It's Austin.
Yeah, at the end of games we span like the Austin AD or Austin LeBron AD in that three-man action in the middle of the floor. That's kind of what we spam. And yeah, the offense is kind of I don't know, it hasn't been as choreographed as it was to start, the year. There's definitely a little bit more freestyling
Hmm.
that's starting to go on. But yeah, I don't know, Vinny. Like I look at this team and I see a lot of the stuff online of, well, I mean, they start two guards who are or they don't start anymore. They were starting two guards that are deficient on defense. But I mean, like, I don't understand what that has to do with transition defense. A lot of the times, I mean, the second best transition defense in the league today is Sacramento. A lot of small
Yeah,
guards.
and they're an awful defensive team.
Yeah,
They're not a good defensive team to my knowledge. I mean, they're better than us, but probably. But I mean, you know what I'm trying to think of, Raj? Like teams that would be like everybody's. And we've said it also. You mentioned defensive foot speed is an issue for those Lakers, or for this Lakers team. But there's a like I'm trying to think of like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like they play two bigs. They're not a fast team. Like they play Mobley and Allen at the same time. Those guys aren't two guys that like run down the floor super hard.
sure.
Obviously, Donovan Mitchell is a huge problem by himself when he's coming down the lane. But it's just like I'm sure there's other teams out there that don't play like super fast and they have plotting bigs, but they're better defensively. So is it? So that brings me to just kind of what my part of the argument, which is I think this roster doesn't have guys. I say this online because I want to reclaim the term goon, NBA goon. Back in the day, the term goon was like used a lot with the like interchangeably with the word like thug. Like they used to
Hmm.
call NBA players thugs.
Hmm.
And there was like a lot of racial overtones to the way that people use it. And they would call
Right.
same way they would use thugs, they would call people goons. And so I want to kind of reclaim that because there's a real basketball value to having goons on your team.
Positive connotation to it. Yeah.
There's a very positive connotation, and it's like those guys that really really get after the 50-50 balls that we were losing against Orlando. Like Tristan Da Silva doesn't shoot the ball for Orlando. Like he's not even trying to shoot the ball majority of the time. His job is to literally go in and defend whoever the wing is on the other side, crash the glass, jump on 50-50 balls, do that sort of stuff. Jalen Suggs, who had a super outlier 3-point shooting night against us, will go in and try and jump over like his own teammates if he has to create offensive rebounds for his teammates. Like we have nobody that does it. Like Vando would be the guy that does that. Maybe Cam does it a little bit, but we really don't have anybody who has an attitude like that about valuing every single possession. And I think the Lakers are going to learn if they haven't learned already. Which I mean, knowing Rob, we don't know if he learns anything at all when he does stuff. We're learning that this team doesn't need any more scoring. Like we don't need guys that can shoot the ball. Like we really, really need guys who want to scrap and turn every game like in nature wants to turn every matchup into a rock fight. And I think it's a roster issue. Like the clip I shared, this will be I'll hand it back to you. The clip I shared in transition defense. If you watch that in slow motion, that's like if you watch the end of it, you'll see 5 Lakers that are down the floor past half court, and only 3 Nuggets are down past half court. But if you actually slow it down and watch it from the start, and you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see D'Lo and Braun stacked right next to each other, stacked on the bottom. And D'Lo's actually in front of the guy that he's defending, which was Trey Alexander, I think was his name. Was a young kid from the Nuggets. D'Lo actually lets Trey Alexander run by him, like he lets him run by him. And if you're watching it, he doesn't look back at LeBron and say, "Hey, go tag him because I'm going to go stop the ball." So what D'Lo does is he lets Trey Alexander go by him, who then races all the way down the floor with everybody's back turned to him, and he goes to kind of cut off MPJ, and then he follows MPJ too as well. Well, now the problem is that you already have an imbalanced floor. You have
Yeah.
3 guys on one side of the floor. So so I think MPJ ends up passing it up to Christian. No, he passes it up to Julian Strawther, right? And Dalton is all the way back. Dalton's like the first guy back. And so that's one thing that was an issue. I was just like, you let a guy that, like, if MPJ didn't have tunnel vision, he could have very easily advanced it to Trey Alexander for a dunk. Nobody would have had a chance to get to it. But luckily, he passes it to Julian Strawther. And so everybody's kind of scrambling. For some reason, Max decides to follow D'Lo and MPJ into that corner for some reason. Maybe because Max thought that, hey, if MPJ attacks D'Lo, he's going to need help, which is understandable. Braun's still kind of jogging back. Trey Alexander, thank God, it sounds like he looks like he's part of the generation of basketball players that's been coached to run to the corner, even though there's an open lane in front of you. So he goes to the corner. Nobody sees him. Julian Strawther decides to attack the rim. He decides to go on the baseline, away from AD. Smart play. It's the right thing to do. Dalton's already back. Like, Dalton's already all the way back, but somehow still allows Julian Strawther to get a pretty clean lane to the rim off that baseline attack. And he doesn't put any resistance, doesn't set up a charge, doesn't flatten out his body to wall off the lane to the rim, nothing. He just runs back, stops, waits, and then lets Strawther kind of just drive by him. And then AD, thinking that Dalton's not going to be able to stop him from getting to the rim, attempts to block the shot. And now all of a sudden there's this huge vacuum behind him, which Russ comes in, grabs it, and puts the dunk back. Because Braun last second goes to the corner because that's where he realizes Trey Alexander's wide open. He wants to cut off the hammer action pass or whatever that's supposed to come. And like that entire sequence, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's on my Twitter account. Go watch it in slow motion. And you can quite literally see, like, somebody should have said something here. Somebody should have said something here. Yeah. Somebody should have said something here. He should have been coached to cut this lane off. Why is it? This is like a basic basketball thing. Why is he not doing it? Like, when you see that many breakdowns on a single play like that, and it wasn't like a frantic play. Like, it's not like it's off a turnover and like everybody's out discombobulated. This is a regular missed shot, I think. Like, when that kind of stuff happens, Raj, like, to me, it's just like, oh, you guys are not locked in. Like, nobody is locked in here. Nobody cares to be like, oh crap, my teammate made a mistake. Let me go cover for him right now. It feels like everybody's just like, we'll just kind of do whatever. I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not going to do it. And that's the part that's hard for me. I think that you have to get more guys that care. I don't know if the Lakers have enough guys that care about defense. And I think that is what is hurting our defense more than any scheme JJ is not already deploying. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I totally, understand that, and I get that. There are players who are, more locked in and who are, dogs or, can be goons on the defensive end, and I feel that, and I'm not saying don't go improve the roster. That's not what I'm getting at. I do think there's like an internal thing that has to be solved, right? Like, this is, and again, it's not just the Nuggets. The Orlando Magic put up whatever points they did. Franz had 39 on us or whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't think they're very good offense either, ranking.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. I think one of the worst offenses in the league. The Spurs also put up a bunch of points on us. Obviously, I believe Wemby was playing, but in any case, they're also supposed to be a bad team. It's just, I think there's a defensive identity issue that has really come to the forefront, that I don't think this is supposed to be the 26th defense in the league. And honestly, like, a 26 defense is a play-in team. Like, it just is what it. You're not going to win enough games as the 82 game regular season continues on. I was looking at today, so in the West they have all these teams above 500. Only two of them, Vinay, have a bottom 10 defense, and they're over 500. That's us and the Suns. And Phoenix has their own issues. KD's been out, Nurkic at center, whatever it is. And they're like 22nd or whatever in defense. So, a few spots ahead of us, but it's just not a sustainable way to win. I think it's fair. Like, we always ask what's fair and what's not. I think it's fair to ask a little bit more out of Rui. I think that's a fair thing to ask. I think it's fair to ask our guards to chase over screens. I think it's fair to have some communication level on the defensive end. And look, there's a level of, like, I'm sure AD goes, you guys aren't trying? All right. Like, I'm, I'll do this tonight. I'm not battling with Joker. You switch. Go ahead. Yeah. I'll take MPG for this possession, or, I'll take Jamal Murray on this possession, or, go ahead and battle him down low. And so I think part of that, is mixed in this too. And I'm sure AD wants a center next to him to kind of help him through this, but I still think there's like a team identity missing. That you can go ahead and trade. You can bring in players. I also think like a outside force coming in shouldn't like be required to I don't know play transition defense correctly or be locked in against the freaking Denver Nuggets who took you out of your season last year for a team that's coming back mostly wholly the same. That type of stuff bothers me, but I'm with you. I think they need some defensive upgrades. You mentioned Vanderbilt's not a real person, so it's hard
He's
for me.
not. Yeah, and I've seen a few other folks make that joke. I've seen a few other folks make the same exact joke that we've made on here. So it's just like, all right, dude, we know you guys watch Lakers Detailed. Like, please don't steal our jokes. we have only so much. So please, the Vando doesn't exist jokes that originated from here. So I won't say who it is that's doing that, but like, we can see it. But
Nando's everywhere but the court. He's like every
yeah,
single area, Rams game.
yeah.
Forgot where else he's going.
Fresh fits. All the. I'm sure he's. They cut out the NBA league fits for him. He's like, no, maybe not this year until I get back up. So let me ask you, Raj. I have this theory. I have this theory that the Lakers are getting diminishing returns with what has happened recently, and with the emergence of some players. I think Dalton's emergence, and we don't have to talk about fit. I think if you guys don't know about it, you can follow up on the last pod. I think Raj and I discussed it pretty intensively towards the end of the pod. I think the Lakers are running into a situation with their roster where they have sort of diminishing returns, and the two guys that they sort of had diminishing returns from right now is D'Lo and it's Rui. And Rui's diminishing return situation was happening even before Dalton's emergence. Rui's not a guy that you want to have on the floor, and he only shoots like 6-7 times the entire game. At that point, you're not really using Rui for what he's best at. I'm not saying you can't ask him to be a better defender or a better rebounder. I think that's entirely fair. I think that's what you're saying. But I think his best skill, his biggest impactful skill is his ability to score, especially in isolation.
Yeah.
And punish mismatch. And if we're not using him for that, you're not using him to his optimal ability. With D'Lo, I would say it's the same thing. And I think JJ's tried to remedy that situation by allowing D'Lo to kind of man that second unit. But he's had shooting struggles, Raj. Like he's like a lot of his threes they're short. Like everything is just short that he's shooting. He's making layups, but sometimes he has tough. He's not really a guy who finishes. It was very athletic and finishes over, athletic defenders and that sort of stuff. So even his like shooting numbers have been kind of shaky a little bit when it's come to the role. The Discord has a theory. The Lakers Detailed Discord has a theory that I won't get into. We'll see how his situation goes over these next 3 games, and then we'll discuss that theory. But I think we're in a situation where if we're really not using them for offense, like, and I'm not saying Rui has to come in and take like 10 straight shots. I'm just saying like he's not like a core guy who's touching the ball every possession offensively. I think I can make the argument that we would be better off swapping those guys out for guys who are worse offensive players or not worse. Let me say more limited in their ability to score the ball, but have a very high defensive value to the team. And I think the Lakers being willing, I think the Lakers, and this was the case that I made in the chat, I think the Lakers have to decide who their offensive guys are going to be. Like they have to just say, you know what, it's AD. And this is what I said in the chat. I said it's AD, Braun, Austin, and like Dalton. Everybody else, your job is to defend. You're being measured on your ability to defend the ball and rebound the ball. I don't care about flashy passes, execution. I don't care. This is me if I was JJ. The rest of you guys have to be able to defend and rebound. If you don't do that well, then obviously you'll get benched. But at this, like, I can't be mad at D'Lo for not being a good defender. That's not in his nature. Like that's not how he made his money in the league. Rui doesn't believe that playing defense. I don't think Rui believes that the reason why he got paid $17 million a year was because he played great defense in the playoffs. I think he believes he got paid $17 million because he had a 30-point game against Memphis because they left him open. and he just went crazy, scoring the ball all over the place. So, what do you think about that? What do you think about like that idea of diminishing returns for those guys?
So it's funny, like while you're talking, you said if you're JJ Redick, you go and say these are offensive players: LeBron, AD, Austin, and Dalton.
Mhm.
And I think your next quote was, "You are being judged on your defense."
Yeah, the rest of you. Yeah.
Why can't you say that now?
Because I think the reception to that information, the reception to that directive, will not be taken positively by some of the players that you'll be saying that to. And I specifically mean D'Lo. I think D'Lo is going to check out and be like, no, I'm not doing that.
For sure. But I mean, that directive there's already precedent for it because you're
Mhm.
doing this for Gabe Vincent.
Yeah.
Who's obviously not being judged on offense, because if he was, he'd be set into the sun by now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's clear that's the precedent set for him. I think Max Christie's in the same boat.
Yeah, I agree.
Max's shot attempts have greatly fallen per minute. He's not really shooting. He's trying to make the right play. But in any case, Max is, in my opinion, being judged for his defense.
Yeah.
Again, my buddy disagrees on the effectiveness of that, but like I think he is being judged just on his defensive, prowess so far.
Yeah.
Look, D'Lo's coming off the bench, and I do think D'Lo's being told to like score and like facilitate that second unit. I do think that's an operative that he's being told. But look, man, there's got to be some accountability that's set. And whether AD has to do it, AD will like do it by like side eyeing. I see a lot, like there's a lot of plays where a player does the wrong defensive rotation and like doesn't say anything, but like his eyes are absolutely screaming a lot of cuss words. Like
I love the Braun. Even when Braun himself doesn't do a rotation, I love the Braun looking at the bench and putting his hands up, looking at the bench. I was like, dude, that was your rotation. Why are you getting mad at your teammates?
Right, but again, this should be like a collaborative effort. And I'm not saying JJ and AD have to cuss someone out together, but like there's got to be some. Hey man, that's your rotation there, and like I'm sitting you, like if you don't. We have one too many guards, man. There's more than enough room to like cut someone. I'm not, again, it doesn't have to be this drastic. I think it's getting to a point where like drastic measures are going to be needed. And this week will tell you a lot, right? You're on a 2-game losing streak. You play a healthy Phoenix Suns. Like if you don't defend tomorrow, you can run out the building. Like you just like,
and they're gonna do what they did last time, where they're gonna give it to like Brad, and they're gonna tell Brad, go ahead and pick on who you want to pick on, or Booker and KD go pick on. We're gonna go find that one guy that we're gonna attack the entire. It might be Austin, it might be whoever, but yeah.
Exactly right, and they can attack in transition as well. And so we'll see how that game unfolds. But then you play OKC, like again, just playing really well, even without Chet Holmgren. They got Isaiah Hartenstein back as well, so they're a lot healthier. This week will tell you a lot in terms of the defensive effort that they come out with. But I have a hard again, like I'm seeing just Austin can't defend, or D'Lo can't defend, or Rui can't defend. It's like all right, like. I get that you want to come and bring defensive guys in. It's just I think the league is littered. Like it's hard to find two-way guys. Like that's a tough. Like that's just how the league is. Finding two-way players is.
What if I made the argument, Raj, that we don't want two-way guys? That we just want like just defensive guys. Like I don't want him specifically, but like I want Stanley Johnson, but like slightly better Stanley Johnson. Like I want a guy who's bigger, maybe a little higher IQ level, but I want the same defensive motor. I want a guy who's going to scrap, won't allow somebody to bully him, that sort of thing. And our guy Walt loves Stanley, and he keeps saying the Lakers should bring Stanley back.
Shout out Walt. Yes.
But I like a guy in that mold. If you take D'Lo away, and you take Rui away, and you give me, I'm not Stanley Johnson, but you give me like something between Stanley Johnson and Vando. Let's put it that way. Somebody who can play between that. Maybe he goes 1 for 3 at the very most. He's not expected to shoot more than maybe 4 times, 5 times. Doesn't even care to shoot the ball outside of open opportunities, right? If I get customize the play actually has a nice suggestion, like Matisse Thybulle, like a guy like that. You just you're not relying on him for offense, but you're relying on him to be disciplined on defense, that sort of thing. If you replace those two guys, do you think your And let's say JJ is like, all right, you know what? I can figure out an offensive balance to where I
Mm-hmm.
can keep two of these four guys always on the floor, our offensive guys on the floor. Do you think that the defense would jump up significantly? Will we go from like 26 to like league average? Because I think we would. That's genuinely how and I don't
Okay.
like doing this thing where we pick on specific players and say that, but I genuinely do believe that part of the issue that the Lakers go through is that the role players, which is a very normal thing to expect of any team, I think the stars, our two stars, can be selective with their defensive engagement. And I think our role players are very acutely aware of when that happens and they follow suit. So you almost need guys that are wired differently, where I don't care what our stars are doing. I'm not letting this guy score on me. Like you have to have like sort of that mean streak, that attitude. And I
Yeah.
don't think we have guys like that other than Gabe, Cam, and maybe
Max.
Max. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I jumping 9 spots for guys who are again just gonna make whatever they're making in the league that you're hypothetically trading for. I don't see 9 spot. I do think the defense would improve, but again, like George brings up with the YouTube chat, like he would just replace Rui for Max, with the starters. So that's my thing. Like we're still playing guys, Vinay, right now for only defense. Like, and you're still at this level. So I I don't know. I think there's a level of accountability that's just needed. I think the team has more defensive talent than they're letting off. I don't know if it's a schematic thing yet, but I do think to your point, there's some engagement that doesn't happen with the stars on a nightly basis. And I also like what part of this too. The Lakers when they were good would do this a lot, Vinay. But like when you're a top offense, you think you could just outscore teams, right? So like I see that kicking in as well. This level of like we're gonna score enough. So at the half, I think it was like 66-62, whatever it was against Denver. It's kind of like we can just score at a pace that's good enough, and we'll win games that way. And that's really how you lose any type of defensive fortitude and identity as well. But before it's been an hour before we close, I just wanted to hit this as well. You mentioned a little bit, but Dalton's gone on the bench, Vinay, for 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
We're 0-2 in those games. I'm not saying that's the exact reason, but watching the starters now, and Rui's still shooting okay, but I came away from the Denver game thinking, like, I think Dalton has to start. Like, I don't know. I came up with that, and maybe this is just confirmation bias of like what I wanted to see, but I think the offensive flow 100% changes. Dalton didn't get a shot until I think 6 minutes into his playtime. I think you're just you talked about not using Rui and D'Lo correctly. I think you have a firepower weapon on your bench that you're silencing, in a way. But just want to close with your kind of thoughts on Dalton's benching and from 2 games so far, from the look that you've gotten, would you go ahead and start him instead of Rui?
Yeah, I think Dalton should start. I think if you're going to have a guy only shoot 7 shots a game and they're going to be mainly wide open threes, Dalton should be the guy that does it and not Rui. I would rather put Rui in a situation where he plays with a guy who's going to feed him high volumes of looks. Like D'Lo is playing pretty careful, honestly, since he's been benched. He's basically looking to pass the ball unless it's a very easy scoring opportunity for himself, or if the Lakers just really badly need to score. And if he's going to be playing sort of like a game manager, go play Rui next to him and let him feed Rui a bunch of looks. And maybe you can sprinkle in Dalton there too as well, alongside Braun. But I think you should start him. I think the speed is faster. I think the team plays faster. You can have 2 slow guys on the floor. I mean, Cleveland does. But if the other 3 guys are pretty fast and they can score, then you are okay with your transition offense. The question just becomes, and also the reason why I want to do it is because I want the Lakers to commit to a decision. Like play if you're gonna act like Dalton is your future, play him. Like play him 30 minutes. Like you're getting to the ceiling, the offensive ceiling of your team is so much higher when Dalton's on the floor, where I would rather him suffer defensively. Like Raj, this would be my last thought on it. We talked about this, playing your young guys and forcing them to have to learn through their struggles. Denver did this. Like Denver, the start of the season, Jamal wasn't good. But Denver said, we're going to play Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther. And for the first 5 games of the season, I remember this because I think Kevin O'Connor or something like that posted some anti-Russ stuff. And he's just like, oh, Russ has been so terrible for the Nuggets, and he made it about the Lakers and Clippers knew it or whatever. But if you watch the Denver games, which I did because some of them were nationally televised, those young guys were struggling. Watson was struggling. Strawther was struggling. And even Braun was struggling to start the season. But Denver was forced because of their cap situation. They let him struggle. They said, we don't care what the situation is. You have to figure out how to play basketball. You don't have a choice because we don't have anybody else to replace you with. And after some time, they figured it out. And then you see a more better version of what that team looks like. Granted, they're still up and down, but they committed to it. They said, Christian Braun's not coming out of the starting lineup. We don't care that he hasn't made shots. He's going to have to figure it out. Peyton Watson is not playing less than 30 minutes because he has to figure out how to play. And Russ is not getting pulled out of the game. We don't care that he's a veteran minimum guy because we need him to be successful in order for them to be successful. And you see Mike Malone trying different combinations. He'll play Russ at point guard and Jamal at the 2, or Jamal will come off and then Russ will play. So it's just when you give the coach the ability to have a baseline understanding, if after 25 games, JJ Redick can confidently say, Dalton is our best shooter, our best move-in shooter, our best relocation shooter. He's our biggest gravity threat against teams that try to load up the paint. And he will try to play at least an average level of defense against guys that are his same size. He's not fast enough to guard guys that are smaller than him, or he's not strong enough to guard guys that are bigger than him. If JJ can walk away from the team 20 games in or 30 games in to say that, then he can do something with that. And I feel like the Lakers are in a situation where, because there's a little bit of basketball politicking going on with contracts and all that sort of stuff, that we can't get to that point. We can do it with Rui, right, Raj? You and I can sit here and say, okay, Rui's good at defending these type of guys and not defending these type of guys, because we watched 30 games of Rui before he got his extension. But we're not doing that with our other guys. We're not doing it with Max or Dalton, and Austin. Obviously, he's starting, so that's what it is. So I think they should. I think Dalton should play, and I think you should go and see. You should challenge Dalton. I think JJ should say, hey, if you want to play in the starting lineup and stay in the starting lineup, you have to be able to defend your position. And if you don't, then I'm going to put Rui back in the starting lineup. That's what I would do, and challenge him. He's a young guy. He's got young legs. He should take up the challenge. And if he does, there you go. You got the guy that really wants to compete.
And then why can't we throw that same challenge to Rui of if you don't defend, we're taking out.
Because I think Rui's showing you that he's not going to. I think Rui is showing you that I'm just not going to do it. You're not giving me the ball. You just expect me to go. Some guys, they just don't have it. I think it's okay to accept that some guys just don't have. There will be some times where Austin tries to play defense. He's genuinely trying, and he's just getting his ass whooped by whoever he's guarding. But I can see that he's trying. He'll for sure. And he looks terrible. He'll look like he's about to get crossed out of his shoes or something like that. But some guys, dude, they're not trying. I don't want to see D'Lo get hit by a screen and stick his arms out like he's doing an airplane, he's mimicking an airplane and spin around in a circle. That just tells me you're not locked in on that end. And so I think you have enough evidence that Rui's not going to do it. And if even when he does it, it's going to be for spot moments. That's where I'm at with that.
Sure. And, I think my main Dalton point is that I want him playing as much with LeBron and AD as possible. I think putting him in second units, again, I think it's the detriment, not just to him, but I think we talked about, I think that can improve Rui as well, get his shots up, get him in a more of a rhythm as a rhythm player, get him the basketball more. And I think it'll benefit both. I think D'Lo and Rui is a lot of firepower off the bench. That's a really nice bench if your starters can maintain. And I think Cam Reddish is a placeholder for now, for whoever comes in, whether through trade or whether through getting healthy. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I think Vinay, they're just gonna keep starting Rui and Cam, and have Dalton off the bench. I think that's unless
Yeah,
losses,
I think they are too. I think they're gonna
unless
do it
lot
unless they end up moving one of those guys, D'Lo
right,
or
or
Williams.
like losses pile up to the
Yeah,
point, where it's necessary. But yeah, I mean, 6 games in a row with Dalton starting and 2 off the bench, you lose those. Obviously, he wasn't the main reason for that. But yeah, just in totality, like closing thoughts, it's just I totally get the defensive concerns and the roster issues, and I know everyone wants to point the stake at Rob Pelinka, which I think is a fair,
oh, I'm leading that charge, Rod.
I,
2025. People
I
are
can,
like, I've gotten some comments. Not to interrupt you, but like, I've gotten some comments like, Danae, you've been like kind of negative about the team lately. Like, this is so unlike you. And for the folks that follow me or followed me for a long time, I'm not negative about the team. Like, I'm just as optimistic as Raj is about what I think. I'm just trying to be a little more realistic as to how much more juice we can squeeze out of like some
sure.
of these players. And I'm not quite sure that we can get there. I think people they're not used to hearing that from me because there's like a little bit of like bluntness attached to it. But go ahead.
No, for sure. And like again, I'm not saying this is some world beater team. I just
Yeah.
again 26 in defenses. We're living next to the Chicago Bulls,
Yeah.
to the Washington Wizards,
That's like a
to the
tanking
Atlanta.
team, Raj. That's like a team that's trying to lose games has that level of defense.
And I feel like I'm psycho. We have a player we think is in defensive player of the year
Yeah.
conversations.
I mean, he's not going to get it because of that reason.
No, of course,
Like,
he's not gonna get it when you're 26 in defense. It's
yeah.
just, but that's a player we believe that should be on like
Yeah.
defensive player of the year
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Every
I
time
think
we turn around and say 80 is the anchor of this defense, they'll be, well, your defense is the 26 ranked defense. So what is
yeah, I
the
don't know how I
anchoring?
respond. I don't know how to respond to that. I'm like, well, I guess you're right, but
Yeah.
yeah, I look at that and I just think like there's a world, and like I think 80 needs some help on that end, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think the roster is definitely a part of this, but there's more to the equation. When I look at teams around, again, I brought this up earlier, but like Ime Udoka has the Houston Rockets going crazy on the defensive end, and they
Yeah.
start a center that's not Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. They start Sengun. They also start Jalen Green, who was not really a locked in. You talk about D'Lo's locked in. Jalen Green was, I forgot what you said about the Hornets, but it kind of matched the Rockets a few years ago of like the inmates running the.
Yeah. Okay. So that's another. Okay. Just so people get context of that conversation, that was a very famous saying said about the Houston Texans at the time or the Houston Oilers at the time, where like the players were running the team, and it was just So somebody made, I think an owner said like the inmates run the. I'm trying to reclaim that the other way to more of a positive light, where like the players are dictating too much of what's going on the floor, and the coach has to kind of come in and give them. But yeah,
right. But like when Steven Silas was there, right, it was very much a very wild team, so much that he was fired, very quickly. So.
I mean, there was talks about players not respecting him as like a coach because like he was like kind of a younger guy, and it wasn't like a tenure, didn't have like the presence of being like a very overbearing coach.
Right. And so, yeah, you just look at, the teams, at the top of defense. I just mentioned Houston, Orlando as well, a young team, missing their defensive center in Wendell Carter Jr., but still defending the Warriors, the Clippers, and Memphis. Like, all these teams have players that are defensively deficient. It's just they have a philosophy and identity that's tailored toward the defensive end, and they stick to it. And I'm not saying the Lakers have to be some top 10 defense, but I think like Vinay, you have a top 4 offense with like a league average defense. You're a really good.
You're
team.
one of the best teams in the league. Yeah, if you have a league average defense. If this Lakers team was a league average defense, we would be damn near undefeated. Like I think we'd have like less than 3 losses, but we just don't defend. We lost the Detroit game because we didn't defend. We've lost the Orlando game because we didn't defend. You can argue that this Denver game you lost because you didn't play any. Like every single game we've lost has literally been because we don't care. We don't want to defend. Simple stuff. That's all it is.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where I want improvements from. And JJ said team needed to play harder in the third quarter. Like, yeah, like, for sure.
I love the hamisms coming out from JJ, and people are trying to spin it like. People are like trying to spin it like, oh, I love the accountability. Like, look, it's so refreshing to see the accountability from the coach. Oh, like our coach last year said the same thing, dude. Like, it's not new, but yeah, it's been funny to see.
Yeah. But so hopefully we get on the right track with that. Phoenix tomorrow, I believe San Antonio on Wednesday, then OKC. This is a very this will be a very very enlightening week. You don't want to drop. You don't want to get back to 500 at the end of this week. You're at 10-6 right now.
Yeah, 10. So. And we'll be closer to that, whatever the 30 game sample size was. That I was about to say Raj Pelinka, but I was going to say Rob Pelinka said that he needed to see to know what sort of things to do with this team or how much to invest in this team. We didn't talk about it, and we don't have to. But Rob making an appearance after the 6-game win streak.
Did he make an appearance? I saw no quotes or nothing from it.
I think it was just like a TV interview or something that he did.
But no quotes from a TV interview? Like
I don't think he said anything world breaking. Does Rob ever say anything world breaking? That's not out of a book. Crazy.
Yeah, but I had to like look. I guess I didn't research too hard, but I didn't.
It's just funny. It's just funny that he decided to show up. But anyways, Lakers have 3 huge games coming up. I don't expect them to win all of them. I'd like them to win at least 2 of those games because I think that'll help reduce some of the anxiety that fans have about how good this team can actually be against competitive teams. The Suns are a very good team. OKC is a very good team. San Antonio is a team that can take a game from you just off the strength of the talent that they have on that team. So we'll see what happens. And we certainly don't want a 5-game slide after a 6-win streak. Because that would kind of undo a lot of some of the stuff that we've done. But as always, folks, we continue to learn new things about this team every game. And this has been a fun ride so far. So we'll see what ends up happening. And we appreciate everybody that tuned in, whether you're here at the start or at the end. You can replay it on the Lakers Detailed X account, or you can wait for me to upload this on Apple and Spotify by tomorrow morning. And, we hope you have a good one, whether you're listening to this during the day or in the evening. And if nothing else, we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Oh, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.